This video is about a resilience technique called active coping. Basically, active coping is the idea that we either control the source of stress or we control our own reaction to that stress. It is about taking initiative and using one's own resources to deal with a challenging situation. This is in contrast to passive coping, which basically is this idea of either avoiding the problem or hoping that someone else might solve the problem for us, which is not a very efficient way of dealing with the stressors that we are dealing with. An important concept to understand in the context of active coping is the idea of agency. Okay? When we feel that we have control over the situation, or when we take control over the situation, and then we deploy strategies to deal with that situation, and when we come out successful, this gives us the confidence. And now that creates a cycle of its own. Because we came out successful, so now we are confident. So we're going to start deploy more coping strategies in the future. So it's kind of we take charge. This ability to have control is critical. In one study, scientists conducted research on people who were going through stage 3 and stage 4 cancer. They found out that because of the active coping strategies they deployed to their situation, they had a better quality of life. This is how powerful it is that people who suffer from stage 3 and stage 4 cancer, which you can imagine will be a very stressful situation for everyone, but still, those people found a way of dealing with their situation. And when they deployed those strategies, the coping strategies, they improved their quality of life rather than giving in to their condition and suffer through learned helplessness, which can lead to mental health problems and depression. Now we're going to talk about the neurobiological side of active coping. We're going to find out the interaction between active coping and the different mechanisms in the brain and the body. This is important for us to understand because this will give us the understanding of how these functions work in our body and how we can change the dynamics, the biological dynamics in our body given a particular situation that we are facing. I talked earlier in one of my earlier videos about the phenomenon of stress response and the two systems that are activated in the stress response. One is the autonomic nervous system and the other one is the HPA or the hormonal response system. Now, active coping manages the response of the HPA axis. So HPA axis release cortisol in our system. Now, cortisol is important for the stress response because it makes us do things, it gives us the energy of doing things, either fight or flight. What studies have found is that active coping manages that cortisol response because too much cortisol for too long can lead to chronic stress. So what coping strategies does is first it controls it so it doesn't exceed the limit, and secondly it brings it back to its normal level, so to the pre-stress level. Okay. Secondly, coping strategies impact the sympathetic nervous system response. Sympathetic nervous system is the one that engages stress. And the parasympathetic nervous system, I told you, disengages stress and repairs it. So coping strategies disengages the parasympathetic nervous system and engages the parasympathetic nervous system. The other area which is important in the context of active coping is the area behind your forehead, which is the prefrontal cortex. This is the area which is responsible for decision making. This is the area which is responsible for rational thinking, for planning, and for goal setting. Okay, these are all essential elements of active coping. So when we engage the prefrontal cortex, and take decisions and decide on a course of action that we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this in order to manage the stressor, this gives the prefrontal cortex power over the amygdala, which is the emotional center of the brain. So it kind of gives it the agency to control the emotional response. Okay, and that becomes adaptive. The more we exercise it, the more adaptive it becomes with practice. Research done on rats have found that under fear response or stress response, the rats would freeze. But if a rat had a chance to do something, for example, to escape, then they would follow that action. So basically what will happen is that the information from the amygdala would be sent to the brainstem area, which would freeze them because they felt they have no option. But given an option, amygdala will send information to a different center of the brain, which is responsible for movement. And now that became their learned habit. The rats learned that in the event of stress and fear, they will move. And this was the active coping strategy the rats adopted, which became their future habit or adaptation. Now we're going to discuss everyday situations where we can deploy active coping strategies. The idea is to get some sort of clarity as to what active coping strategies are and how we can deploy it in different scenarios. So let's talk about an average employee. Okay, they are loaded with work. And that's one of the biggest cause of their stress. How are they going to manage? How are they going to deploy active coping strategies? So they can break down their project or their work into smaller chunks, small manageable chunks, a to-do list, which they can engage in on a daily basis. They can talk to their supervisor and get their ideas about the project. If there are any confusions, they can talk to their colleagues and see if they can help in managing their work or giving them a more efficient way of dealing with it. Okay, or maybe they can renegotiate the deadline. These are all strategies and tactics you can engage in to bring the pressure down or to cope with the stress so that you can successfully manage your workload. In the context of relationships, let's suppose somebody is going through difficult relationships with their friends or with their loved ones. Okay, active coping strategies would be talking to them, expressing their needs, trying to understand what the other side is trying to convey to them. Okay, rather than engaging in passive strategies, where they will engage in passive-aggressive behavior. That is not efficient. What is efficient is taking action, step-by-step actions, optimal actions, talking to them, listening to them, explaining your point of view to them, coming to a mutual conclusion about the issues at hand. In a health context, let's suppose somebody is told by a doctor that their cholesterol is high or their sugar level is high. And if they don't control it, it can lead to serious heart conditions or other cardiovascular diseases. So how are they going to do with it? It's a stressful situation. Well, they're going to listen to their doctor, and they're going to do research themselves, and they're going to find out about the best methods that they can deploy. Diet, exercise, having social relationships so they can reduce their stress level. These are active coping mechanisms they will engage in to control the situation that they are in. Another situation that we all face is financial problems or difficulties. Okay? So rather than stressing about it, we need to have an action plan. We need to find out if there are any debts that we need to pay. We need to find out where our money is going. How can we reduce our expenses, unnecessary items? How can we save some money? How can we plan ahead? These are active coping strategies to deal with the financial stress that we are going through or we anticipate in the future. A student who is facing exam and they feel like they've wasted a lot of time and now the exam is just around the corner. That's stressful. That's very, very stressful. So how are they going to deploy coping strategies to deal with this situation? Well, they can talk to their supervisor, their tutors, their teachers, and come up with a plan. Okay? I've got 60 days left in my exam. These are the number of topics that I have to deal with. I will deal with this number of topics every day. And I will have a teacher or a tutor to talk to if there are problems, if I don't understand something. And then stick to that routine or that plan that you've set out to yourself. This is active coping to deal with the stress that you are going through. Now I will talk about the practical method of deploying active coping in our everyday life. So first and foremost, and this is very, very important for us to understand, is that we need to identify the problem. And most importantly, we need to identify our reaction to it. Okay, let's suppose there is a stressful problem that we are facing at work, in relationship, whatever the context is. Now, what is our reaction? Are we freezing or avoiding? We need to change our mindset first. That's the first step of the protocol, that we need to change our mindset. We need to say to ourselves, this is a challenge that I will overcome. Okay? We're giving a message to the brain that get into action. Through our prefrontal cortex, we are telling our emotional system that we're going to do something about it. Now, the brain needs to know what. So the problem needs to be explained to the brain in clear words, not vague terms, not I have a stress. I have this problem because of this issue. Okay? I am going through a lot of stress because of project X. Clear. The target is crystal clear. So, change your mental outlook first. Okay? That this is not a threat. This is a challenge response. And I will do something about it. But first, let me identify what exactly I'm dealing with. Exactly. Clear. The red apple hanging from the tree. The brain sees it, moves towards it. Okay? That's very, very important. Now, you have identified the problem. You're going to engage in a mental exercise called brainstorming. You're going to look at different options. You're going to weigh the pros and cons of the situation. Okay? And through that evaluation, you're going to come up with a course of action or a strategy to follow that, okay, this is the most efficient way forward. This is the most optimal way forward. And I'm going to break it down. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. Now, critically, and very importantly, once you have a plan of action, take action immediately on the first step. This is important. This is indicating to the brain that now you are moving, that you've moved. Okay, this is very, very important. Now that you've moved, make sure that during the process of that project that you're completing, you do take advice, you do consult people, you do take feedback. Okay, and also you need to have a system of monitoring that are you sticking to the routine or not? Are you sticking to the schedule or not? Okay, there has to be some sort of a system in place. For example, suppose I want to write a book, and I'll say, well, okay, the book will be 250 pages. Sorry, 250,000 words. Okay, so I'll say, well, okay, I'll aim for 1,000 words a day. So now I need to have a system where I will question myself that have I written the 1,000 words or not? Okay, that's very, very important. Now, importantly, we need to understand is that life will throw things at you. Okay, we need to have some sort of flexibility in our plans, because otherwise it'll be too stressful for us. Okay, we need to be flexible, that things might happen which might create obstacles, or it might throw us off course. But we will get back to it as soon as possible. Okay, so let's suppose writing the book, I fell ill for 3 days. That is 3,000 words less. So rather than stressing about it too much, what I can do is I'll say, okay, what I will do is rather than writing 1,000 words a day, I'll now write 1,300 words for the next 3 or 4 days to make up for the loss. That's in my power, that's in my capacity. Okay, this is something we need to keep in mind.